Gen 9 Pokemon review. What are my thoughts on the new Pokemon and have they changed since launch? A lot of people got mad and said the new Pokemon would grow on me. Did that happen? Now you might be thinking, well, it's a tier list and it's a reaction. Where is the face cam? I already had it when I initially reacted to the decks, and unfortunately, the really good reactions are lost to the Nintendo takedowns. But if you want like the face cam and you want to see the life drain from my eyes, check out my 107 new Pokemon reaction video. But now let's get into the tier list. So we have some tiers right here. Actually good, decent, meh, bah. Not a Pokemon, there's a lot of those, and then we have the secret, the worst thing ever tier. How many Pokemon will go in there? Not even I know. We're just gonna do this live. So starting off with Paldean Tauros. Very meh Pokemon for me. Like, they took Tauros and they made it black, and it just seems to be forgettable, underwhelming, and have really nothing to do with the games or the region in any significant or meaningful way. Could have been implemented better. It's just brown Wooper as well, so not really anything going on. Now, as for the starters, oh boy. So we have decent on Sprigatito. Feeling it. Cool little cat Pokemon. Fuecoco, still meh for me. I really didn't like it on launch, and there's a weird thing that's gone on with Generation 9, is that my perception of some Pokemon I initially didn't like, it's not that they grew on me, it's that everything else was just so terrible, they kind of floated up because everything sank below them. So I went from just like not having it with Fuecoco to, at least it's kind of a Pokemon, so I guess that's the thing. Quaxly though, actually good. Quaxly is best starter, Team Quaxly, all of that stuff. But then we have Floragato, and man, this is probably the coolest Pokemon in Generation. Now, I'm not going to like do this specifically by ordering, but I think there's so few Pokemon and actually good, we can just straight up organize it that way. So Floragato, like, that's a Pokemon. And what I say about Generation 9, the reason why it's so unsuccessful is that they put theme over actual design. There was absolutely no care to make cool Pokemon designs. They just went like and got high on their own supply of cheekiness and theme, and then you just get complete abominations. And then it really feels like there weren't any good Nishida style designs either, just kind of like going for a cute thing that feels like Pokemon. Very few of these feel like Pokemon or even feel like they need to exist. Floragato really captures the spirit of Pokemon. But then we have Meowscarada, where once again the design just kind of completely falls apart. It's mostly the mask making it a bad design, where it's just ugly for the sake of being ugly. So another problem with Generation 9 is there's a lot of things that just aren't from Pokemon. Like, it would be a decent or good design in a different franchise, but it seems like there was just way too much desire to rip off other franchises for this generation, and it just didn't work for Pokemon, because Pokemon is best when it's being Pokemon and sticking to the original and core designs. This is why Generation 5 failed. This is why I have videos specifically breaking down why Generation 5 failed in design. And I also said this about Generation 8, that like Pokemon wasn't trying to be Pokemon for whatever reason, and that's where you get a lot of failings in design. So you either have that, you have just horrible abominations or blobs. We have a mix of all that. Nah, this is the worst thing ever tier on the, I forget what its name is, and I can't be bothered. Crocalor, there we go, that brain's still activated. What is it? It's a nothing blob that has a stupid sombrero that doesn't even go anywhere with the evolution. That Firebird doesn't have anything interesting on a bad Pokemon design. We also have the Quaxly evolution. It's just a bad design. It takes all of the cool potential we could have had with Quaxly and then show you, no, we're going down a dark path and it's not getting any better. And that's when we get into Quaquaval, just a complete abomination. The headpiece, like the way that its head is stylized, doesn't really work. Its whole theming doesn't look good. The toes, what the frick what is that? It's just disgusting down there. And then for some reason it's got a booty. And if you're gonna give a Pokemon cake, at least give it good cake. But Quaquaval doesn't have that. None of it makes sense. It's an abomination of wasted potential, and its animations are atrocious. Next up we have Lechonk, which I guess it's meh tier, but I still want to call it a bad Pokemon because it's just a nothing blob that is being carried by name. Nothing memorable, nothing interesting. It's just a ball that kind of resembles a pig. I mean, at least with previous generations like Grumpig and Spoink, that evolutionary line doesn't get a lot of love or care or attention, but at least it has some kind of theming, and it's like, yeah, that seems like some kind of Pokemon thing that would jump out at me in the Pokemon world, but Lechonk is just a... There's nothing to it. And then the evolutions. Where do we... I'm gonna put Fuck Pig at just the worst thing ever. Like, why did they put makeup on a pig? Why is it presenting in its Pokedex entry? The biggest problem with subversion in design is that it only works once, and after that, it's stupid. So we have Lechonk just nonsensically having a gender split, but the one that looks like a girl is the boy. And then that reminds me of the Meteos clip when he was talking about new League of Legends champions. He was like, alright, so here's the Riot devs. You know, one of them pitches a new champion, and it's like, okay, the champion can't move, can't earn gold, can't auto-attack. But it's balanced, 50% win rate. Oh, it's so different! That really feels like how Game Freak went about Generation 9 Pokemon designs. I was really just, oh, my expectations are subverted! It's so creative! When really, it's just a pile of trash, and it's not even an interesting, like, result of a Pokemon or lore or what it represents or anything like that. Same thing for, like, the Dunsparce. We just have a bad thing. Now, I personally just don't like segmented insects and things like that, so the only thing making this, like, not a Pokemon or just complete abomination is that Dunsparce is a really good Pokemon design. So we just have, like, you threw another segment on Dunsparce and made it weird. You kind of ruined it, and you also did all the Dunsparce fans and Dunsparce itself dirty. But it's just bad. Like, the worst I can say about it is that it's bad. Everything else just bad. It's hard to say. That's not a Pokemon, man. Like, I could see where this could have a better theme, but once again, it's like, oh, it's called an orb spider, so we're going to make it an orb of silk, and then it still looks ugly. Oh! Also, it has, like, more yokai vibes, and that's the thing, it's like another franchise or Digimon or something, but Spidops, like, I have no clue what was going on there, and yeah, that is, like, just over-designed as well, just complete nonsense. The Cricket Pokemon's also bad for similar reasons, and also Lokix, similar reasons, where, okay, I get Kamen Rider is like a thing in Japan, it has cultural representation, not my thing, and also just straight up not a Pokemon if you're, again, stealing or just going way too hard into a different franchise. We don't need a Dung Beetle. We don't need anything to come from a Dung Beetle. Like, sure, it's a real world thing that can then be represented in the Pokemon world, but you don't have to. You don't have to make an ugly thing that just rolls around a ball of shit and put it into a children's game. Now here's where things start to get interesting. When Greavard was first revealed, I was just super down on it. My multiple reactions were just, nah, this thing is stupid. I still think it's a really stupid design. Lot of wasted potential when you have a ghost dog, man. A spectral hound could be so much better. But god damn it, when it dances in the gym battle, it's slightly adorable. So it goes to meh. But like bottom of meh tier. Houndstone's just bad though. There's no adorability to salvage it, and it takes like the worst traits of Greavard and just dials it up. And again, just blowing more potential. I don't know what this garbage is. And I mean, like, bad designs at best. Also, like, wish it wasn't a Pokemon. We're gonna put that in not a Pokemon tier. We got a decent design here for Farigiraf. The Girafarig evolution, kind of a silly Pokemon already, especially when, like, the whole naming thing comes in. And he looks kind of neat with his hoodie, so that's a thing. Not a Pokemon, and, like, kind of meta in not being a Pokemon because it's not a Diglett. But, like, why does this even exist? I guess, like, not the worst thing ever, but still just, like, just complete waste of a Pokemon. Same thing for just, like, the Arfix. It doesn't make sense to create this thing, have them make no sense, and then get very little expansion or very little reason to use or exist. We got Dondozo. I just think it's a meh design, but I don't know, man. Like, sometimes the ways that the Pokemon look are different from time to time. So like, as I'm experiencing Dundos in the game, I'm just kind of like, I mean, I guess we could have a fat, blobby Pokemon, but it's not good, and not good is closer to bad than meh. So I'm just not a fan of that, and even Wishcash like beats it for Pokemon design. We have Veluza. This thing, again, just a bad design. It's mostly from the fillet away. Now, I was super hype on Veluza coming from the original leaks where we just got to see its face. I'm like, okay, we got a pretty interesting, cool-looking fish coming in. As long as they don't ruin design, Generation 9's gonna turn around. And then it did not come up Millhouse. After that, I like these forms. I mean, like, it's one of those things where, can't say this is the worst thing ever. But when it comes to these Pokemon, like, we got a cute dolphin Pokemon. We have a Pokemon that's actually a Pokemon, and it's adorable, and it has something just different enough to make it feel like it's fitting in the Pokemon world. And that's what I mean, like, you're either succeeding on cool designs, or you're succeeding on cute designs. When you stray from that and the original generations, that's when you lose the spirit of Pokemon. After that, we have Smoliv. It's just a bad blob. It's a nothing Pokemon. Kind of had that fitting in with the whole Lechonk reveal. This is just an abomination, though. I'm not a fan of Lilligant's Hisuian form. Anything that's too doll-like, anything that seems too creepily feminized, I'm not about. This is just a bad design for Arbivola. Capsicid and Scovillain are completely irredeemable. We see the live reaction. What is that? How did something so ugly, how did such an abomination find its way through? What is it? What is it supposed to do? How did anyone think this was an interesting design that fit into Pokemon in any capacity? Somehow we need a tier worse than the worst thing ever. We have, I mean, it's like one of those things where it's like, it's not a Pokemon, but I mean, I guess if the other tadpole Pokemon can be a Pokemon, which that's very loose as well for Generation 5. The whole evolutionary line is just weird. What's that? Temple? And then the evolution? It's all awful. It's all awful from Generation 5. This is the worst of it. Bellable, just completely awful and irredeemable for me. Mostly off of just like the whole thing that, oh, the little dots are its eyes. Why? What's the point? Oh, but you don't understand the theming. It's an electric Pokemon, and then they put in the Plasma Ball, but doesn't need that. Doesn't do anything for the design. Like, you can see the design is so lost. It's just garbage elements just kind of slapped together. It's like, all right, we got a Plasma Ball, then we got some splotches, then we got some fake eyes. Like, if it didn't have, like, the yellow dot eyes, it would be bad. But then when we get down to here, it's like, nah, man, you completely threw it away, and you got nothing in return. Awesome. The engine Pokemon. It's kind of a call where, you know, okay, inanimate Pokemon are a thing, but I think they're just done in, like, the worst, ugliest ways. Like, going into the promotional art we've seen, it's just horrible. Yeah, that's not a Pokemon. Next up, we have Worm. Why do we have Stupid Worm? Why do we have Stupid Worm that sprouts arms? James Turner, I bet this is yours, but yeah, it's like, it doesn't work. It's not good. We have Tandem Mouse. The mouse evolutionary line is meh, like low meh, high bad, which kind of makes it funny on the tier list when we're breaking down. It's like, yeah, this thing's C minus D plus. There's no S tier. It's A, B, C, D, garbage Z. Like, weirdly too forgettable and plain to actually stumble into being bad. So Titan, though, that's just not a Pokemon. Its eyes, why? Its mouth, oh, it's so just unappealing and wrong. Where do I put the pre-evolution, though? That's the question, you know? Is it bad? It doesn't, like, kind of fall into all the trappings just yet. Like, it's bad in regards to its evolution, like, the evolution literally dragging it down a tier. Once again, in the game, and my audience caught it, and I'm not happy with them for catching it, where when, like, the first time I ran to Grusha, it does, like, the little, like, fake out where the camera pans, and that thing's just sitting there smiling at you, and I gave out, like, a little, oh, and I That was subconscious. That came from somewhere deep within. I think the evolutionary line's bad. I think Citadel is just a nothing, and it's trying to float on like, I'm happy and cute. And unfortunately, that can still just kind of ping just a little bit, so fine, it goes to meh. This is just bad. This is just bad. This is just bad. Tatsugiri, I think it's one of those things where a lot of designs could just easily jump into a higher tier and be a good Pokemon design if it wasn't for the refusal of making Generation 9 designs Pokemon-like. Also, we can scroll down because not too much else is going into actually good, if anything. So, like, Tatsugiri, it's meh. I love Sushi. I think a Sushi Pokemon had some cool potential. It doesn't look that terrible in game, but it's kind of weird that, like, it puffer fishes out the rice on, like, and it just kind of has, like, weirdness, and then it's just kind of a nothing, like a forgettable nothing that didn't really take the theme to an interesting direction. So when it comes to Cyclizar, when I first saw it, I was like, this is stupid. And then when I saw people writing on it, I'm like, this is really stupid. Then when I saw people like kind of speculating on it being a pre-evolution of the legendaries, I thought this is extra stupid. So like, yeah, this is just a bad, ugly Pokemon design. And then I used it. I wanted to try out the Shed Tail, and from behind, it is disgusting. It's just gross and weird, and it also has just a bad cry, and it really captured, like, you didn't even consider the back sprite. Like, there was no care whatsoever put into this generation. And then we have Palmy evolutionary line. Blob equals bad, and barely changed Blob doesn't really do anything else on top of that. Once again, like, the subversion comes in where it's like, oh, it looks like a fire teddy bear. No, it's the Pika clone. What a waste. And then we got Wattrel evolution line. The thing about it is that it really feels like the entire generation drags us down. One reason why I don't hate them is I can, like, kind of feel these guys just being Generation 3. Like, they look and feel like Generation 3 Pokemon. Maybe a little weirdness here. The Penguins of Madagascar vibe throwing me off by being like, not terrible regional bird, so like decent potential. But then like this kind of has like, there's something uncanny about it for Pokemon that might drag it into meh, but like, bird is bird, so that's a thing. Bombardier. It's more meh. Like, I think there's a decent design. A Stork Pokemon's kind of cool. But then, again, there's something underwhelming or something missed about the design. I really don't like Squawkabilly, though. I also don't need to be clogging this up anymore, so I'm just going to drag all the forms down below, because the more we add, the more I have to scroll down, then the less you see, and the weirder the entire tier list gets. So, Squawkabilly, not a fan of the Pompadour. Never been my thing. This, though, man, it is just bad. But it's like, it's just a flamingo that has a slack jaw, and then does nothing and represents nothing and means nothing. Like, that is the most filler of filler. It's like they just took something out of the trash and then decided to make it a Pokemon, even though it brings nothing and was completely unneeded. And the problem with almost every Generation 9 design is that it looks like a rough draft. It looks like that there was some super PC, everyone gets a trophy thing going on at Game Freak, and that no one was ever allowed to feel bad and have their feelings hurt over their designs being terrible. So everything just kind of got greenlit. Cloth is so bad that it's like, it's so at the bottom of bad that it's really also just not a Pokemon as well. It's just gross. It's just ugly. It just doesn't work. This is where it gets weird, because like Minecraft, we're just like not a Pokemon because Minecraft, an abomination to competitive, and then like slight nod Mario Mushroom Rock, it's bad. Yeah, it's not a Pokemon either. Like that's just failing. Now Glamora I can kind of see, but the pre-evolution just kind of weird. So I mean these are just bad designs, where it's like not really working out too much. Then we have decent. I think, like, it's one of those things where, again, now it goes both ways. That the generation can bring down a lot of designs, but it can also, again, kind of float the designs that are somewhat borderline. That I think Grafaia is not a Pokemon. It's alien, it's ugly, it's so horribly designed, and it throws away incredible potential of some kind of, like, tagging graffiti Pokemon, but no, instead it just has to like spit on its finger and then do weird middle finger things. But it's an eye, but that doesn't matter. It just looks atrocious. However, there's something about morning kids cartoon is silly enough to be inoffensive. Does that make it meh? Nah, it doesn't have, like, I think it's kind of sticks too close to Graphite being alien to where maybe they could have, like, maybe in a different world, in a different evolutionary line, this kind of becomes something more decent, but at worst it's meh, which is actually kind of like praise for how bad Generation 9 is. After that, we have Fido, which is just a horrible thing. Can't even call it a Pokemon. It has the face of an old man. It doesn't look like a dog at all. It's just, and then it breathes yeast, so I mean the lore behind it just doesn't work. But then Doc's been actually good. Like that, it looks like a dog. And then it's decently executed. Actually, I would say well executed. So some people, they don't like food themed Pokemon. Slurpuff ended up growing on me in its own weird way. And that's kind of also like another weird thing is like, I'll use ugly Pokemon. I'll use abominations competitively to make one point or another. Some Pokemon I just absolutely will not touch out of just complete disdain and hatred for it. But like Barbaracle, I used it and then I found out that the ugly Barnacle is OP and you can 6-0 with it in Generation 6. And that was fun. But it didn't grow on me. So you can't just be like, well, you only like Slurpuff because you used it until you liked it and you thought it was busted. But there's kind of more to that, where like you start to feel this Pokemon's fitting in the world, and then that just happens every once in a while. So far, it hasn't happened with Generation 9, and for most Pokemon, as I experience them, as I see them walking around, I'm like, oh, it's even worse than we could have thought. You know, like when it came down to Quaquaval, it's like, maybe salvageable? No, oh, just threw all of that away. Using Cyclizar and just seeing how ugly that thing is, and so on. But then when like Dogspin's like, yeah, food Pokemon, it's baked bread dog, and it's cool. I like it. So going from not knowing what a dog is to a well-made dog, and then back down to just not knowing what a dog is. Like, there's a rough shape there, but like, did it pinch a nerve? Like, what's wrong with it? Why does it look like a hot dog, but it doesn't catch any of that theming? It just got mustard hair on top and just completely out of place. Almost to the degree of not being a Pokemon, but I mean, I guess if you make an animal-ish thing, like it's just bad to not a Pokemon as well, just so bad on it. And then much like with Greavard and Houndstone, where it's like, yeah, that's the worst way you could have done this theme for a dog design. Really cool. And then this is where things get interesting again on Pokemon that grow on me. So when I first saw the leaks and the reveal for this, I was just like, cool, they made a nothing dog. Like, I guess it's more of a dog than the pre-evolution, but still just a bad design. And then it mean-mugged me in the game. And I went, yo, that thing's actually pretty cool. So it gets upgraded to decent, actually making probably the biggest jump we have seen so far. So whatever, like, the sad face initial impression of this Pokemon, it's just very weak. But then when it turns up, it's actually kind of cool. After that, we have Bramblin and Bramblegast. I think there was a lot of potential here. I personally like Delmise. For some reason, this is like, could have just been regional variant or some kind of R-Fake Delmise, but they decided not to. Like, it even has kind of the same eyes and the same typing and like other weird stuff going on with this similar theme. And I'm a big fan of spectral feeling Pokemon. Like when I first saw Klefki as like some kind of leak or some kind of image, I don't remember exactly how, but just landed on the internet before the games came out, I was like, yo, spectral keyring looking cool. Turned out to be a fairy type Pokemon, but it still had that energy for me. And since Ghost is my favorite typing, I'm going to be more favorable of Ghost type Pokemon in some cases. Now there's still Ghost Pokemon I don't like and that are hard for me to like. Wait, not you. Where did he go? Yeah, you. It's hard for me to like some Ghost Pokemon as well. But then I was like, you know what? We got Tumbleweed, which is already like a dead thing, and then we got Ghost elements inside of it. I like Phantom and Trevenant more, but again, that's like that kind of energy there. It's where if it wasn't spoiled by Gen 9 syndrome, could have actually been cool. Meh. But again, that's actually praise for Generation 9 because it's not terrible. And then we have Gimmighoul, some of the worst Pokemon to ever exist until it evolves. I just did a whole video on Golden Go and how James Turner designs have ruined Pokemon for a long time, but that really capstoned it. And then we have the Paradox Pokemon. So a lot of these didn't really work for me. Some of them are decent, a lot of them are just terrible. Like, yeah, that's not a Pokemon at all. The naming scheme is stupid, and once again, just a representation of how the developers got carried away and just stopped caring about what it means for Pokemon, or stopped caring about making an actually good design. Sometimes they kind of flubbed it to where it's like, a decent-ish design. Actually, no, like Amoonguss, I can't say like base Amoonguss is actually a decent Pokemon, it's meh. But then like going from meh to bad, because like why'd they give an octopus mouth for no reason? I guess just kind of expanding on Amoonguss wasn't interesting enough, and it can't be a Pokemon according to Generation 9 design philosophy, so they have to do something weird or gross with it, or awkward for no reason. I'm not saying like, oh, the mouth is gross per se, but like with other designs where they just make it an abomination for no reason. Tusk, meh, like, not horrible. It just kind of feels like pseudo-legendary-ish, and on Donphan. Not really a huge fan of Donphan to begin with, but alright. Next up we have the Jigglypuff. Like, Succubus Jigglypuff is a weird theme. I think it's like too weird for me to call decent. So I mean, once again, we got a meh design. Now I do like Fluttermane. Fluttermane's decent. But then we're just kind of taking a Generation 2 design that was good. I like Misdreavus. And then just kind of expanding on it. I don't think it beats Misdreavus, because then it's like one of those things where like, okay, you just kind of slapped on some extra design for no reason because it's in line with the rest of the things you've been designing, so... Okay, I guess, but hey, decent for Generation 9. And then, I'll say decent on the, the Paradox for Volcarona. I'm neutral on Volcarona, but a weird thing that happened with Generation 9 is that it made me appreciate Generation 5 designs. And that sends a chill all the way to my core, because Generation 5 is the worst Pokemon generation. I think I did like a tier list video about it, or like which Pokemon designs I actually like, and it's 10% of the decks, which is a pretty big failing. So again, not a big fan of Volcarona. And then like they do something like this, where it's a pre-evolution, and it's got some things with like, comparatively, that holds up to being a Pokemon and being kind of interesting. I'm kind of mixed, because when it stands up, it looks weird, but it also kind of has that fluffiness to it, to where it's like, it's at least a thing. Like, it at least passes for being a Pokemon. I think the Salaman's design is bad. Again, like, over-designed from a different franchise kind of thing. Maybe to the point, like, maybe ugly to the point of making it to not a Pokemon, because it was like, what happens if we take Salamence and we threw it into Monster Hunter, but also made it look like the worst Monster Hunter monster? So that's where we kind of start falling into the not of Pokemon, but there's also just like clearly not a Pokemon, and then just like ugly and bad designs. So it's like bad, not a Pokemon. You know, D- or whatever I called this tier. This is just awful though. It doesn't have a face. Why is Generation 9 deliberately ugly and unappealing designs for no reason, dude? We got Mech Volcarona. Once again, neutral on Volcarona. I don't think this does anything for it. I really just feel like all the future designs just start off at bad, because they're completely unnecessary, they don't make any sense. All it does is open up theories as to, oh, but what if Pokemon go extinct in the future? And I'm just not really sold on everything being Chrome in the future, and much like with Ultra Beast, Game Freak could have just not done that. Doesn't need to exist in any capacity, so actually technically that makes it not a Pokemon. All of the future forms are not a Pokemon, just based off bad design, except I think Hydreigon gets salvaged because it just looks exactly like Hydreigon. And that's not the worst Generation 5 design, so we have something that like squeaks in. But I think they just like completely flubbed on Tyranitar, threw that design away. Delibird, that's just a complete abomination for me. It looks too much like Metal Sonic, and like I've said in the movies, or like I said in the other videos, the way that plays on my childhood trauma of the Metal Sonic movie, nah, ain't having it. That just creeps me out way too much. Man, I'm conflicted on the legendaries as well, because like, mostly bad. This is not a Pokemon though. Kind of bad, but also kind of meh, because like, you can still catch into some weird kind of Pokemon things, but it's like, it gets there on the Pokemon-ish thing, you know? So I liked that the theme, I think the lore is what saves this one for me, and I don't even know their names immediately off the top of my head. We're just like hatred and fear poured into that bowl and then manifested into a Pokemon. So it's like, all right, sometimes we just have Earth becoming sentient and fear making it sentient actually explains why it has the stupid looking bowl on its head. And then we have like the cursed object theming behind it. So I was like, okay, that's actually a bit interesting. And when you have a snow leopard that just plays around in avalanches, all right, that's kind of interesting for the Pokemon. Again, I think taking the design a little too far with like the stupid big giant bull head or using the cursed objects as like way over designed fangs, kind of failings right there. I think the lore of this thing is neat, but it's just ugly. And then like Fire Goldfish is very underwhelming and forgettable. Then we get into the other legendaries, the main legendary Pokemon. So Koraidon. The more Koraidon existed after the reveal, the more I was like, he's aight. And then the more I played the game, I'm like, well, Koraidon's just literally toothless, and that's kind of cool. And you know, design is aight. And then when you look at the art, it can grab you. And then as more and more designs from Generation 9 didn't feel like Pokemon, Koraidon started becoming more of a Pokemon. I look at this and go, yeah, I can see that on the box for a Pokemon game. I'm not a big fan of most of the legendaries, you know, like Reshiram, Zekrom, when that first dropped, it's like, ooh, we Digimon now. But then, like, as the other generations and other designs have come through, it's like, whoa, we really not Pokemon now for Generation 8, Generation 9, and again, like, Generation 5 and some other sprinklings in. I struggle with Lunala and Solgaleo, but also with, like, Diamond and Pearl version. I only picked Pearl when I was a kid because Palkia creeped me out the least, and Dialga's head is freaking weird. So we have, like, those things. Kyogre's cool. Not a huge fan of Groudon, but I can see Groudon's place in the Pokemon world pretty well for the design. And what salvages Koraidon is the art. You look at that, and we got a cool dragon friend. A cool Pokemon-ish design that is severely lacking in Generation 9. And then, its neck. Just way too much of a victim of over-design for me to be like, yo, this is a cool Pokemon. Like, if the neck was done differently, we would have an actually good Pokemon. But instead, it's just meh. And it's carried by the art and like some of the other interactions of it where it's like, could have worked, but then it just fell victim to Generation 9 syndrome. So good design falling to Generation 9 kind of just throws it into meh. Same thing on this. Once again, the subversion only works once. Oh, he's got the tire. He has this design-ruining element, and then he runs on his feet. Haha, it's so funny. Once. I think Miraidon is bad to straight up not a Pokemon. Like, the feet, the legs, once again, it's like, why? Why just make something have an unappealing trait, an unappealing design for no reason, but it needs to have thrusters and look like a modern motorcycle? Or you can make it look like a Pokemon in your franchise called Pokemon. All the Tinka whatevers are just bad designs, shouldn't be Pokemon. But, yeah, I don't know. It's like, not a Pokemon, shouldn't be Pokemon, just bad. I like the lore, though. I think it's funny, but you can just slap that lore on a better designed Pokemon, and everything's better. Charcadet, bad. Armarouge and Ceruledge, not a Pokemon. Like I said when they were revealed, Ceruledge looks cool, but from a different franchise. Like, you slap that into Mega Man or something, or you just kind of put, like, some people are saying it looks like a Persona character. Also, there's all kinds of franchises people are, like, relating to a lot of these Pokemon. Some of these Pokemon, because I can't even call them Pokemon. But yeah, where it's like, yeah, it's a cool design, but it feels very out of place and, like, borrowed from somewhere else in a not a Pokemon kind of way. These things are just... yeah, we just can't allow any of the art fakes to be above not a Pokemon tier. Like, what is that awful just weirdness? And then this thing running around, that's nightmare fuel. King Gambit, not a Pokemon, kind of for the same things where it's like you don't have to. Bisharp, one of those bad Generation 5 designs I never really cared about. Then King Gambit just saying, let's make it worse. Clodsire though, actually good. You can have a good design that doesn't take itself seriously, that still captures what Pokemon is, and that's where we are with Clodsire. It's a happy dirt blob. It's got some sentience, but it's also pretty derpy and unaware, and that's why everyone loves it. And then we have Annihilape. It was bad. I think there could have been a lot more potential with this whole thing, but instead they were just like, let's make it really angry. And that's it. So Primeape also getting shafted, much like Dunsparce and other Pokemon. And there we go. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.